Welcome to this 365 Freedom Strategy session. Today we're breaking down the mechanics of aligned skill building and why your vision's biggest bottleneck is your scattered competence.
Yeah, and I think it's critical we establish right away that we aren't just talking about working harder today. It's really about the mechanics of way that work is actually directed.
Right.
Yeah.
Because so often the friction you feel isn't a lack of effort at all. It's the friction between your current capabilities and your future goals. As your internal strategic partners, our agenda for this session is highly targeted. We are going to examine the exact architecture of aligned skill building, dismantle the pervasive myth that feeling stuck is a motivation problem, and analyze a specific micro-story from our sources about a scattered business owner.
And through that analysis, we will demonstrate exactly how mismatched skills derail your momentum.
But before we get into the heavy analysis of this material, I do have to push back a little right out of the gate. I mean, we are conditioned to believe that having a wide array of competencies is inherently a good thing. In the early days of any venture, aren't you supposed to wear a million hats?
Sure, yeah.
Doesn't being a generalist save you when things go sideways?
Yeah.
So why would being highly capable in multiple areas actually become a strategic liability?
It's a completely fair pushback, and it is exactly why this trap is so insidious.
Yeah.
There is a massive difference between operational necessity, doing what it takes to keep the lights on, and strategic skill building. The diagnosis here in our material centers on this concept of scattered competence.
Ah.
Being a generalist is fine for survival, but it is a terrible strategy for momentum. Think of your energy as vectors in physics. If you have 10 units of energy and you push all 10 units in one single direction, you move 10 spaces forward. But if you have 10 units of energy and you disperse them across 10 different skills pointing in 10 different directions, your net forward movement is zero. You are exhausted, you are highly capable, but strategically you are standing completely still.
So you're sweating, your heart rate is up, but you haven't actually left the starting line.
Exactly.
That makes complete sense. And that stationary feeling is where the psychological toll really starts to compound, isn't it? I was reviewing the notes for this session, and there's a fascinating breakdown of how founders consistently misdiagnose this lack of progress. They look at their net zero forward movement, and they immediately label it a motivation issue.
Which is the single most destructive misdiagnosis an entrepreneur can make.
Because if you think your problem is a lack of motivation, your prescribed solution is always to just try harder. You tell yourself to force it, to care more, to drink another cup of coffee, and just push through the exhaustion.
Exactly. And let's look at why we default to that. We live in a culture that worships hustle. If you aren't succeeding, the cultural narrative tells you that you simply aren't grinding hard enough. But the notes we are analyzing today flip that completely on its head. They state that if your goals feel distant, it might not be a motivation issue at all. It is highly likely a skill alignment issue.
I want to pause on that because the psychological shift there is massive. If I spend a 10-hour day working frantically, but at the end of the day I feel like I made zero progress toward my actual vision, I usually feel incredibly guilty. I feel lazy even though I just worked 10 hours. What happens in a founder's brain when they realize they aren't lazy, they are just misaligned?
The immediate result is profound relief. When you diagnose your lack of progress as a motivation issue, you are essentially assigning yourself a moral failing. You are telling yourself you lack discipline or that you do not actually want your vision badly enough.
Right, you internalize it.
Yes, and that creates an immense cognitive burden. It breeds guilt and shame. And what happens when humans feel guilty and unmotivated? We usually retreat. We hide in the tasks that are easy for us, which only makes the scattered competence worse. But the moment you reframe it as a skill alignment issue, the entire paradigm shifts. It stops being a character flaw and becomes a mechanical problem.
It's like realizing your car engine is running perfectly fine, but the steering wheel is just completely disconnected from the tires. You don't need a new engine. You don't need to press the gas pedal harder. You just need to reconnect the steering column.
That is a perfect analogy, because if you keep pressing the gas pedal harder while the steering is disconnected, you are just going to burn out the engine. That is the compounding negative effect of this misdiagnosis. Recognizing it as an alignment issue changes the entire solution from try harder to aim better.
Aiming better. I like that. The short-form script in the materials uses a very specific phrase that really caught my eye. It says, if your goals feel distant, look at your skill alignment. I want to talk about that word distant, because distance, in this context, is entirely an illusion, isn't it?
It is a complete illusion created by misaligned effort. The distance between where you are and where you want to be feels vast, almost insurmountable, because the path you are currently walking isn't actually leading there. You are walking on a treadmill, staring at a mountain through a window. The mountain looks incredibly far away because you aren't actually walking toward it, you're just moving your legs.
So the vision isn't necessarily far away or impossible to reach. It is simply that your current daily actions, the skills you are choosing to execute, are not the vehicle that travels to that specific destination.
Precisely. When you align the skill, that illusion of distance collapses. You step off the treadmill and take one actual step toward the mountain. The progress becomes tangible immediately.
That actually brings up the specific example outlined in the notes we are reviewing today. Having identified this problem of scattered competence and the illusion of distance, let's look at what this looks like in the real world. The notes feature a micro-story about a scattered business owner. The details here are so relatable. This owner had a crystal-clear vision of what they wanted to build, but they felt entirely scattered in their execution.
Right.
The text specifically notes they had experience in many areas, but none of those skills directly supported their bigger vision. Let's analyze this friction point. How does someone end up with absolute clarity on their destination, but total chaos in their daily execution?
This is the classic hallmark of the scattered founder. And it requires us to look at something a bit uncomfortable, which is why founders actively sabotage their own momentum.
Sabotage is a strong word. Are you saying they do this on purpose?
It is rarely malicious self-destruction. It is almost always a subconscious reliance on comfort. This business owner was maintaining skills that belong to their past. We all have a tendency to do this. We hold on to the competencies that built our initial success because they are safe. They provide a high, immediate return on our ego.
Give me a tangible example of what that looks like in practice.
Let's say you started a boutique marketing agency and you were originally the best copywriter on the team. Your copywriting built the business. But now your vision is to scale that agency to 50 employees and step into a true CEO role. That new vision requires you to become an expert in executive leadership, financial forecasting, and high-level talent acquisition. But being a beginner at executive leadership is terrifying. You are going to make mistakes. You are going to feel incompetent.
So instead of practicing financial forecasting, you go back and rewrite a junior copywriter's sales email.
Exactly. You rewrite the email because you know you are good at it. You finish rewriting it, you send it off, and you get that hit of dopamine. You feel incredibly productive.
But strategically, you accomplished absolutely nothing toward the actual vision of becoming a CEO. You maintained a skill from the past to generate a false sense of productivity. You are actively avoiding the necessary discomfort of building the new skills required for the future.
It is the most sophisticated form of procrastination because it masquerades as hard work. You can work a 14-hour day, completely exhaust yourself, and still be procrastinating the entire time if those 14 hours were spent executing misaligned skills. The text says their skills were spread across multiple areas, none directly tied to the path they wanted to follow. That conscious or subconscious avoidance is what creates the scattered feeling.
Yeah, and the emotional weight of that has to be staggering. Feeling scattered isn't just an operational inefficiency. As you said earlier, it's a severe cognitive burden, deep down in your gut, that you are busy but you are not being effective.
You are systematically diluting your potential impact. By spreading themselves thin across irrelevant skills, the founder in this microstory was starving their future vision to feed their past comfort.
I want to make this immediate for the listener right now. Think about your own daily tasks. Audit what you spent your time doing today or yesterday. Are you relying on past expertise just because it's comfortable? Are you hiding behind tasks that you already mastered 3 years ago? Or are you actively practicing the specific, uncomfortable skills that are absolutely required for your next strategic step? Diagnosing this past skill sabotage is critical, but it is only step one. We need to look at how to actually fix it. Let's examine the specific intervention that saved this business owner's vision.
The intervention detailed in the notes is striking because it is not what you would expect. When a business is chaotic, the instinct is to execute a massive operational overhaul. But they didn't do that. The text says, we created a simple list of the skills that truly aligned with their next step. They practice one skill each day for a week.
It's radical simplification.
It is. When you are overwhelmed by scattered competence, the absolute worst thing you can do is try to fix everything at once or learn 5 new skills simultaneously. Clarifying a few key skills and focusing on just one isolates the variables. It removes the overwhelm entirely.
I want to focus heavily on the phrasing their next step, because this seems like a place where people trip up. They didn't list the skills required for the ultimate destination 10 years down the line. They focused on the immediate next hurdle.
This is a vital distinction. The vision provides the compass heading, the overarching direction, but the skill alignment must serve the immediate next step. If your vision is to build a multinational logistics company, your 10-year skill might involve international supply chain law. But if your immediate next step is securing your first small warehouse lease, you don't need to practice international law right now. You need to practice commercial lease negotiation. The vision is the macro, but the skill alignment must be fiercely micro.
And looking at the dosage of the intervention, the email text specifically says, give it a few minutes of practice. Why just a few minutes a day? If this skill is so crucial for the next step, shouldn't they be practicing it for 4 hours a day?
It sounds counterintuitive, but those few minutes are a deliberate strategic constraint. Momentum is not built through exhaustive, intense bursts of effort that leave you completely depleted by Tuesday. Momentum is built through consistent, aligned micro actions.
It's like going to the gym. If you haven't worked out in 5 years, going to the gym and lifting heavy weights for 3 hours on day 1 is a terrible strategy. You'll be so sore you won't go back for a month. Doing 10 push-ups every single morning is a much better strategy for building actual momentum.
Exactly. By constraining the practice to just a few minutes, you eliminate the friction of starting. The human brain resists massive, sudden identity shifts. If you tell yourself you need to practice a terrifying new skill for 4 hours, you will find a reason to reorganize your inbox instead. But you cannot convince yourself that you do not have 3 minutes. This small commitment forces the founder to prioritize consistency over intensity.
It becomes a daily strategic imperative. The social media messaging in our source notes echoes this perfectly. Choose one aligned skill today and give it a few minutes of practice. It sounds almost too simple. But to execute this intervention correctly, we have to understand the critical difference between passively acquiring information and actively executing the strategy. This is where so many people get stuck. We need to break down the technical difference between learning and aligned practice.
I would argue this is the most vital distinction in the entire framework we are discussing today. Notice that the source material does not say, learn about one skill today. It explicitly and repeatedly uses the word practice. Practice one skill each day. Give it a few minutes of practice. We must separate these two concepts entirely.
Let's do that, because I know I am incredibly guilty of confusing the two. I will buy 3 books on a subject, listen to 5 interviews with experts, and feel like I'm doing the work.
That is exactly what we call productive procrastination. In the modern business environment, learning has largely become a passive, comfortable accumulation of knowledge. It is deeply tied to those past habits of feeling productive without actually taking any risks. Watching a tutorial, reading a book, listening to an analysis, these are acts of learning. They are safe, they are theoretical, they do not require you to perform, and therefore they do not require you to potentially fail.
So learning is theoretical, but practice is mechanical. Aligned practice is active, targeted execution. It demands that you apply a specific capability directly to the immediate requirements of your vision. Let's go back to the founder needing to become a CEO. If they need to get better at public speaking to pitch investors, reading a book about public speaking is learning.
Right, and standing in an empty room, recording yourself on your phone while you deliver the pitch out loud for 3 minutes, and then forcing yourself to watch the playback, that is practice. Practice is uncomfortable. Practice exposes your current inadequacies, and that is why founders constantly hide behind learning.
Hiding behind learning. That is a powerful phrase.
You convince yourself that you cannot take action yet because you simply do not have enough information. You tell yourself you need to take one more masterclass, read one more case study, get one more certification. But if that learning does not translate immediately into the aligned daily practice of a specific skill, it is not closing the gap between your current reality and your vision. It is just expanding your library.
It's preparation, acting as a shield against execution. Going back to the micro story, the business owner didn't spend the week reading about a new industry. They spent a few minutes each day mechanically executing one specific skill. They forced themselves out of the theoretical safety of knowledge and into the mechanical reality of practice. And what happens when you make that shift? What is the ultimate result of moving from passive learning to aligned practice?
It triggers a fundamental transformation in psychology. The source material outlines this in what we can refer to as the architecture of self-trust and momentum. There is a definitive statement in the text. Self-trust becomes stronger when your skills align with your vision. By the end of that single week of practicing just one aligned skill for a few minutes a day, the notes state the business owner didn't just believe in their vision, they believed in themselves.
Let's really dissect that. How is self-trust actually manufactured? Because people talk about confidence like it's a magical aura you were either born with or you aren't.
Yeah.
You talk about faking it till you make it.
Self-trust is not a mystical trait. You cannot meditate your way into genuine self-trust, and you certainly cannot fake it. Self-trust is a structural byproduct of alignment. Think of it as evidence-based confidence.
Evidence-based confidence. I like that. Meaning you have to provide your own brain with the evidence.
Exactly. We need to talk about cognitive dissonance again. Cognitive dissonance is that stressful, buzzing background noise in your brain when your actions contradict your stated beliefs. When you tell everyone, and yourself, that you want to build a specific, ambitious future, but you spend your day practicing comfortable skills that do not build that future, your brain recognizes the lie. You cannot fool your own subconscious. It sees the mismatch, and it erodes your self-trust. You start to doubt yourself because your actions are proving that you are not serious.
But the moment you align them, even if it's just for 3 minutes of terrifying, uncomfortable practice, the brain registers the truth of your actions. The dissonance vanishes. The gap between what you are currently capable of today and what your vision requires tomorrow fundamentally shrinks.
The blog post in our notes expands on this psychological transformation beautifully. It says, they no longer felt like they were trying to become someone new. They felt like they were stepping into the version of themselves they had envisioned all along.
There is immense relief in that realization, because the fear of change is usually the fear of losing yourself. But aligned skill building doesn't force you to change your core identity. It doesn't ask you to become someone you aren't. It simply equips the future version of you that already exists within your vision. You are just providing the mechanical tools for that future self to finally operate.
That is the absolute core of it. You aren't faking it until you make it. You are practicing it until you become it. The email subject line in the source material encapsulates this release of tension perfectly. It reads, when your vision and skills finally match.
The word finally carries so much weight there.
It implies a long, exhausting period of struggle, of friction, of pushing a heavy boulder up the wrong hill. When your vision and your skills finally match, the struggle doesn't magically end. Business is still hard, but the friction of scattered effort completely disappears. The internal tension is released because your energy is now flowing efficiently in a single, targeted direction.
Which leads us directly to our final strategic directives for this session. Skill alignment turns uncertainty into direction. When you are uncertain about what to do, your default reaction is to scatter your efforts, hoping something, anything works. But when you align your skills, you have a definitive heading. And as the text repeatedly states, when your skills and vision point in the same direction, momentum builds naturally.
It is crucial to remember that momentum isn't something you can force through sheer willpower. It is the natural, physical consequence of removing the friction of misaligned skills. When you stop spreading your competence across irrelevant areas and you focus it precisely on the next required step, you create an aerodynamic profile for your efforts. The resistance drops and the speed increases automatically. Your confidence becomes steadier, not because you are suddenly arrogant, but because your direction is finally clear.
That clarity is exactly what we want you to walk away with today. We have broken down the mechanics of scattered competence. We have diagnosed the illusion of the motivation problem and the cognitive burden it creates. We have laid out the highly specific intervention of daily, focused practice over passive learning and how that manufactures genuine self-trust. Now, as your strategic partners, we want to leave you with a final challenge based on everything we have analyzed today. It is one thing to add a new habit. It is much harder to break an old, comfortable one. If you were going to commit just a few minutes today to actively practice the one specific skill that aligns with your future vision, which of your comfortable past-aligned skills are you finally going to stop practicing to make room for it? What safety blanket are you willing to drop right now to take that actual next step?
It's the question that changes everything.
If you're ready to build the skills that support your next step, visit 365 Freedom online to join the community. This has been a 365 Freedom Strategy Session.